Rodrigo was a 28-year-old geology student from Universidad Nacional Mayor de San Marcos, who had climbed every major peak within 300 kilometers of Lima. Natasha was a 26-year-old photographer from St. Petersburg who spoke 4 languages and had documented indigenous communities across 3 continents. They met in a hostel in Huacachina in January 2004, fell in love over discussions of rock formations and ancient Inca trails, and decided to attempt something no other couple had tried, spending 3 months alone in an abandoned mining shelter at 4,800 meters, documenting how extreme altitude affects human behavior and relationships. The plan was simple. Hike to the old copper mine refuge near Nevado Huascaran, establish base camp, and survive until April using only what they could, carry in 2 backpacks. They told exactly 3 people where they were going: Rodrigo's geology professor, Natasha's editor at National Geographic Russia, and the hostel owner in Huacachina who watched them load their gear into a beat-up Toyota pickup on March 15th, 2004. The truck driver who gave them a ride to the trailhead remembered Natasha laughing as she showed him her engagement ring. Rodrigo had proposed the night before with a ring he carved himself from a piece of granite they found together on Huacayash Mountain. But the abandoned refuge they were looking for had been destroyed by an avalanche in 1987. Local guides knew this. The mining company knew this. Even the Peruvian National Police knew this. The couple didn't. When they failed to return by May 1st as promised, search teams found their truck exactly where they'd left it. The keys were under the floor mat where the driver had told them to leave them, their plane tickets back to Russia. And Peru sat on the dashboard, dated May 15th, 2004. 3 separate rescue expeditions spent a combined 47 days searching a 200 square kilometer area around the supposed location of the mining refuge. They found nothing, not a footprint, not a piece of torn fabric, not a single sign that 2 people had ever walked those trails. The search ended after 6 weeks, when early winter storms made the high altitude areas impossible to access. Officials declared Rodrigo and Natasha missing, presumed dead, and their families held memorial services in Lima and St. Petersburg. Natasha's mother kept her daughter's bedroom exactly as she'd left it for 8 years before finally donating her clothes to charity. Rodrigo's father quit his job as a civil engineer and spent his retirement savings hiring private investigators who found absolutely nothing. Vicente Morales wasn't looking for missing people when he discovered the bodies on September 23, 2024. He was tracking 3 missing alpacas that had wandered away from his herd during a sudden snowstorm. The alpacas had taken shelter in a narrow canyon called Quebrada Seca, a place so remote that it appeared on only the most detailed topographical maps. The canyon was 40 kilometers east of where every search team had looked for the missing couple. It was also 15 kilometers away from any established trail to the mining refuge they'd been seeking. The skeletons were lying side by side, facing each other, with their arms positioned as if they'd been embracing when they died. Both wore every piece of clothing they'd packed: thermal underwear, wool sweaters, down jackets, waterproof shells. Their boots were still laced tight. Rodrigo's backpack contained 14 energy bars with bite marks in them, a water purification system, and a detailed journal written in Spanish and English that documented their final 11 days alive. Natasha's camera told a more complete story. The photographs showed their journey from the main trail into increasingly difficult terrain as they searched for the non-existent refuge. Picture 89 showed them setting up their first camp next to a frozen lake, both smiling and making peace, signs at the camera. Picture 156 showed Rodrigo pointing at something in the distance while snow fell heavily around them. Picture 203 showed their tent nearly buried in snow with icicles hanging from the entrance. Picture 247 was a selfie of both their faces, taken with the camera held at arm's length. They looked exhausted. Behind them, snow was falling so heavily that the background was completely white. The journal entries revealed what the photographs couldn't capture. March 18th. Still no sign of the mining buildings. Weather getting worse, but we're staying positive. March 22nd. Natasha thinks we should turn back, but I'm sure the refuge is just over the next ridge. We've come too far to quit now. March 25th. Lost the main trail yesterday, using compass and map, but visibility is almost zero. Found shelter in small cave. March 26th. Natasha's right. We should have turned back days ago. Going to try to retrace our steps tomorrow if weather clears. March 27th was the final entry, written in Natasha's handwriting. Storm has been going for 30 hours straight. Can't see more than 2 meters in any direction. Rodrigo hurt his ankle badly this morning when he fell between some rocks trying to find firewood. We're trapped. If someone finds this journal, please tell our families we love them and we're not afraid. The forensic investigation revealed exactly how they died. Both bodies showed signs of severe hypothermia and dehydration. Rodrigo's left ankle was fractured in 2 places. More importantly, they'd been walking in the wrong direction for 6 days. Instead of heading back toward the main trail, they'd gone deeper into the most isolated part of the mountain range. The compass in Rodrigo's backpack was broken, probably from the same fall that injured his ankle. They'd been navigating using the stars, but with constant cloud cover and snow, they couldn't see the sky for their final week alive. The location where Vicente found their bodies was a natural wind tunnel that channeled every storm through the narrow canyon. The weather records from March 2004 showed that a massive blizzard had hit the region on March 24th and continued for 8 consecutive days. Temperatures dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius. Wind speeds reached 120 kilometers per hour. Even experienced mountaineers with proper emergency shelters would have struggled to survive those conditions. But the most haunting detail came from Natasha's final photograph. Picture 247 wasn't actually a selfie. The angle was wrong, and both of their hands were visible in the frame. Someone else had taken that picture. The timestamp showed March 26th, 3:47 p.m. According to the journal, they were completely alone at that time, trapped in a cave during the worst part of the storm. Vicente turned the camera over to police, who enhanced the image using modern digital. Analysis. In the background, barely visible through the falling snow, there's a dark shape that doesn't match the surrounding rock formations. It's roughly human-sized and appears to be standing upright about 50 meters behind the couple. Enhancement software couldn't determine what the shape actually was, but it was definitely there when the photograph was taken. Local indigenous communities have stories about Quebrada Seca. The Quechua name translates to dry canyon, but locals call it Ñawpak Puñuy, which means the ancient sleep. According to oral traditions passed down for over 500 years, it's a place where the spirits of lost travelers gather during storms to guide other lost souls to safety. The stories say that people who die in the canyon are never truly alone, that the spirits of previous victims stay with newcomers to provide comfort in their final moments. Rodrigo's journal contained one detail that investigators couldn't explain. On March 25th, he wrote, "Heard voices outside the cave last night. Sounded like people calling our names, but when I looked outside, nobody was there. Natasha says it was just the wind, but I swear someone was trying to help us." The entry was written 24 hours before they died, during a period when no rescue teams were anywhere near their location. The recovery operation took 3 days. Vicente led a team of professional mountaineers and forensic specialists back to Quebrada Seca to retrieve the remains and personal belongings. The canyon was so narrow and dangerous that they could only work for 4 hours at a time before weather conditions became too risky. On the second day, team leader Carlos Mendoza reported hearing voices calling from higher up the canyon, but when they investigated, they found nothing but empty rock faces and frozen waterfalls. DNA testing confirmed the identities within 2 weeks. Rodrigo's father died of a heart attack 3 days after receiving the news. He'd spent 20 years believing his son might still be alive somewhere, working as a mountain guide or living with an indigenous community in some remote village. Learning the truth was more than his 78-year-old heart could handle. Natasha's mother traveled from St. Petersburg to Lima for the funeral. She was 84 years old and hadn't left Russia in over 2 decades, but she insisted on seeing where her daughter died. The funeral was held at the base camp, where all rescue operations for missing climbers begin and end. Over 300 people attended, including mountaineers who had participated in the original search efforts, geology students from Rodrigo's University, and photographers from Natasha's magazine. Vicente Morales was given a special honor for discovering the couple and ensuring they could finally be laid to rest. He refused to accept any reward money, saying that finding lost souls was a shepherd's duty, not something deserving payment. Both families decided to bury Rodrigo and Natasha together in a small cemetery in Huaraz, the closest town to where they died. The granite headstone was carved from rock taken from Huacayhash Mountain, the same location where Rodrigo had found the stone for Natasha's engagement ring. The inscription reads simply, "Rodrigo Cantaria and Natasha Volkov. Lost together, found together, forever together." The abandoned mining refuge they'd been searching for was never rebuilt after the 1987 avalanche. Maps still show its location, and hiking guides still mention it as a potential destination for experienced climbers. Local authorities have discussed removing it from official trail maps to prevent other tragedies, but the process requires approval from multiple government agencies and has been delayed repeatedly by bureaucratic complications. Vicente Morales continues working as a shepherd in the same area where he found the bodies. He's discovered the remains of 4 other missing climbers since 2024, all in locations where no previous search teams had looked. Local rescue organizations now consult with him before planning search operations, recognizing that shepherds know mountain terrain better than anyone else. He's never accepted payment for his assistance, but families of recovered climbers have funded the construction of 3 emergency shelters along previously unmarked trails. The camera containing those final 247 photographs now sits in the archives, of Peru's National Institute of Mountaineering Safety. Families of missing climbers sometimes request to examine similar recovered cameras, hoping to understand what their loved ones experienced in their final days. The Institute's director reports that nearly every camera recovered from fatal climbing accidents contains at least one photograph that can't be fully explained. Mysterious shapes in the background, impossible lighting conditions, or images that seem to show more people than were actually present when the photo was taken. Quebrada Seca remains one of the most dangerous and isolated locations in the Peruvian Andes. No official rescue operations are conducted there because the terrain is too difficult and the weather too unpredictable. The canyon appears on satellite imagery as a thin, dark line cutting through otherwise solid gray granite. During winter storms, it becomes completely impassable for months at a time. Yet shepherds report finding evidence of human presence there almost every year. Abandoned camping equipment, pieces of torn clothing, and sometimes complete skeletons that have been naturally preserved by the extreme cold and dry air. The final mystery remains unsolved. Enhancement analysis of photograph 247 has been repeated by forensic experts in Peru, Russia, and the United States. All three investigations reached the same conclusion. Someone or something was definitely present when that final picture was taken, but digital analysis cannot determine what it actually was. The shape appears solid and three-dimensional, not a shadow or optical illusion. It seems to be moving toward the couple's location, but whether it represents a threat, a rescue attempt, or something else entirely remains unknown. 20 years after Rodrigo Cantaria and Natasha Volkov disappeared into the Andes Mountains, their story serves as both a warning and a reminder. Modern GPS systems, satellite communicators, and emergency beacons might have saved their lives, but thousands of climbers still venture into remote areas with nothing but traditional maps and compasses. Search and rescue statistics show that over 200 people go missing in the Peruvian Andes every year. Most are found within 72 hours. Some are never found at all. The granite ring that Rodrigo carved for Natasha now sits in a display case at the Mountaineering Museum in Huaraz, alongside equipment recovered from other fatal climbing accidents. Visitors often comment on how perfectly preserved it appears after 2 decades in one of the harshest environments on Earth. The museum's curator explains that granite is one of the most durable materials found in nature, capable of surviving virtually any conditions for thousands of years. Like the love story it represents, some things are built to last forever, even when the people who created them cannot. What happened to their belongings reveals another layer of this tragedy. Inside Natasha's backpack, rescue teams found her passport, completely intact and readable after 20 years of exposure. The pages were frozen solid, but showed no water damage. Her visa stamps told the story of someone who had traveled extensively through South America in the months before. She died. Argentina in November 2003, Bolivia in December, Peru in January. The final stamp was dated March 10, 2004, from the immigration office in Lima. She had 5 days left on her tourist visa when she died. Rodrigo's wallet contained 347 sols in cash, enough money to live comfortably in Peru for 2 weeks. He also carried a letter from his geology professor, dated March 12, 2004, recommending him for a master's degree program at the University of Chile. The letter was sealed in a plastic bag and remained completely dry. His professor had written, "Rodrigo demonstrates exceptional understanding of Andean geological formations and has the practical experience necessary for advanced research." The recommendation would have guaranteed his acceptance into one of South America's most prestigious graduate programs. The couple's sleeping bags were zipped together to form a double bag, creating a shared space where they could conserve body heat. This technique is standard survival protocol for couples in extreme cold conditions. Inside the joined sleeping bags, investigators found Natasha's notebook containing what appeared to be love letters written during their final days. The entries were dated March 24th through March 27th, written in alternating handwriting as they passed the notebook back and forth. March 24th, Rodrigo's handwriting. "If we don't make it out, I want you to know these have been the best 3 months of my life. Meeting you changed everything." March 25th, Natasha's handwriting. "I'm not scared of dying if I'm with you. We'll face whatever comes next together, just like we planned." March 26th, Rodrigo again. "I can't feel my fingers anymore, but I can still feel your heart beating next. To mine, that's all I need." March 27th, Natasha's final entry. "The storm is getting worse, but you're still making me laugh. How do you do that when everything is falling apart?" The forensic team discovered evidence that suggests their final hours were longer and more complex than initially believed. Scratch marks on nearby rocks indicated that one of them, probably Rodrigo, based on the height and angle, had attempted to climb out of the canyon to search for help or signal rescuers. The scratches formed a rough path up the western wall of the canyon, extending about 30 meters before stopping abruptly. At the highest point Rodrigo reached, investigators found threads from his jacket caught on sharp granite edges and drops of frozen blood that DNA testing confirmed were his. This discovery changed the timeline of their deaths. The blood evidence showed that Rodrigo had made the climbing attempt on March 28th, a full day after Natasha wrote her final journal entry. This meant he survived alone for at least 24 hours after she died, spending that time trying to save himself or find help that would allow him to recover her body. When his strength finally gave out, he climbed back down to where Natasha lay and positioned himself beside her in the same embracing pose where Vicente found them 20 years later. The water purification system in Rodrigo's pack was partially disassembled, with components scattered throughout the surrounding area. Reconstruction of the device revealed that he had attempted to modify it into some kind of signaling device, possibly to create smoke or reflect sunlight toward potential rescue aircraft. The modifications showed sophisticated understanding of the equipment's internal mechanisms, confirming his geology background and technical expertise. However, the missing components were never found, suggesting they may have been blown away by the extreme winds that regularly swept through the canyon. Analysis of their remaining food supplies revealed a pattern of careful rationing that extended their survival time far beyond what should have been possible. The energy bars in Rodrigo's pack had been divided into precise portions, with each day's ration calculated to provide exactly 800 calories per person. At this consumption rate, their food should have lasted exactly 18 days. They survived for 19 days, meaning they reduced their intake even further during their final week to extend their supplies as long as possible. The couple's tent, when fully reconstructed by forensic specialists, showed evidence of repeated repairs. Using improvised materials, torn sections had been patched with pieces cut from their spare clothing. The tent's guy lines had been replaced with strips of fabric torn from Natasha's scarf and Rodrigo's extra shirt. These modifications demonstrated their determination to maintain adequate shelter even as their situation became increasingly desperate. The tent's final position suggested it had been moved at least 4 times as they searched for better protection from the wind and snow. Inside the tent, investigators found a small pile of stones arranged in a deliberate pattern next to their sleeping area. The stones were smooth river rocks that didn't match the surrounding granite terrain, meaning Rodrigo and Natasha had carried them from somewhere else, possibly from the frozen lake shown in photograph 89. Local indigenous experts identified the pattern as a traditional Quechua arrangement used to honor deceased family members. This suggested that one of them, probably Natasha, based on her anthropological background, had learned about local customs during their travels and created a memorial shrine during their final days. The broken compass that led them astray was a high-quality instrument manufactured in Germany and purchased specifically for their expedition. Forensic examination revealed that the compass needle had been damaged by a strong magnetic field, not by physical impact, as originally suspected. This type of damage typically occurs when compass equipment is exposed to large deposits of iron ore or other magnetic minerals. Geological surveys of the area where they died confirmed the presence of significant iron deposits throughout Quebrada Seca, explaining why their compass became unreliable and led them progressively further from established trails. Weather reconstruction. Using historical satellite data revealed that the storm they encountered was the worst recorded in that region for over 50 years. Wind speeds exceeded 140 kilometers per hour on March 26th, strong enough to move boulders and reshape the landscape. The temperature dropped to minus 35 degrees Celsius, cold enough to freeze exposed skin in less than 10 minutes. Even more devastating was the wind chill factor, which brought effective temperatures down to minus 55 degrees Celsius, a level that makes survival impossible without heated shelter. The storm's intensity also explained why their emergency whistle, found attached to Natasha's jacket, showed evidence of heavy use. The metal whistle's surface was worn smooth in the areas where lips would contact it, and the internal mechanism was clogged with frozen saliva. This indicated that both Rodrigo and Natasha had used the whistle repeatedly, probably for hours at a time, attempting to signal rescuers who were searching 40 kilometers away in the wrong location. The whistle's maximum effective range under normal conditions was approximately 1 kilometer. In the wind conditions they experienced, the sound wouldn't have carried more than 200 meters. Vicente Morales later revealed additional details about the discovery that he hadn't shared with initial investigators. When he first found the bodies, his 3 missing alpacas were standing in a semicircle around the skeletons, facing inward as if guarding the remains. The alpacas showed no fear or agitation, which Vicente found unusual since animals typically avoid areas where humans have died. He also noticed that the immediate area around the bodies was completely free of animal tracks, despite clear evidence of wildlife activity throughout the rest of the canyon. The shepherd's observations led to a more thorough investigation of the site's environmental conditions. Researchers discovered that the specific location where Rodrigo and Natasha died sits at the convergence of 3 separate microclimates, creating an area where temperatures remain relatively stable year-round. This explained the exceptional preservation of their remains and belongings, but also suggested they may have unconsciously chosen the spot because it offered the best available protection from the elements. Documentation from the original 2004 search efforts revealed a critical failure in coordination between rescue teams. 3 separate groups were searching simultaneously: university volunteers, organized by Rodrigo's professor, professional mountaineers, hired by Natasha's magazine, and official police rescue units. None of the 3 groups communicated effectively, with the others resulting in overlapping searches of the same areas, while vast regions went completely unchecked. The canyon where Vicente found their bodies was marked as searched on 2 different maps, but neither search team had actually visited the location. More disturbing was the discovery that local guides had specifically warned search coordinators about Quebrada Seca, describing it as a place where people vanish. These warnings were dismissed as superstition by university-educated search leaders who focused their efforts on areas that appeared more logical according to standard mountaineering practices. If the guide's advice had been taken seriously, Rodrigo and Natasha might have been found while they were still alive. The couple's camera equipment included a GPS unit that was never activated during their expedition. The device was found in Natasha's pack, still in its original packaging with the instruction manual unread. GPS technology in 2004 was expensive and relatively new, but it would have prevented their navigation errors and allowed rescue teams to locate them immediately. The unit's battery was still at full charge after 20 years, meaning it would have functioned perfectly throughout their ordeal. Analysis of the photographs recovered from Natasha's camera revealed technical details that professional photographers found remarkable. Despite the extreme conditions and her deteriorating physical state, she maintained perfect camera settings throughout the expedition. Her final photographs showed no evidence of camera shake or exposure errors, indicating steady hands and clear thinking even during their most desperate moments. Photography experts noted that this level of technical precision under extreme stress demonstrated exceptional professional skill and mental discipline. The mysterious figure visible in photograph 247 became the subject of extensive digital analysis by 3 different universities. Computer enhancement revealed that the shape possessed characteristics inconsistent with known wildlife or human presence. Its proportions were wrong for a human being, too tall and narrow, but it maintained a consistently upright posture throughout the sequence of enhanced images. Most puzzling was its apparent motion. The figure appeared to be approaching the couple's location, but showed no signs of disturbed snow or footprints in the surrounding terrain. Scientific investigation of indigenous oral histories revealed that Quebrada Seca had been considered a sacred site for over 8 centuries. Archaeological evidence confirmed the presence of pre-Columbian ceremonial structures near the canyon's entrance, suggesting that ancient peoples recognized unusual properties in this location. Quechua-speaking communities maintained detailed oral maps of the entire region, with Quebrada Seca marked as a place to be avoided, except during specific religious ceremonies conducted only by trained spiritual leaders. The final detail that investigators couldn't explain came from analysis of the couple's body positions. Forensic reconstruction showed that they died facing each other with their arms intertwined, but the angle of their skeletons indicated they had been moved after death. The positioning was too precise and symmetrical to have occurred naturally, as their bodies settled. Someone, or something, had arranged them in their final embrace, but no human footprints were found anywhere near their remains when Vicente discovered them 20 years later.